The Shadowed Ones were an Alpha Legion warband which would be founded shortly after the events of the Horus Heresy. The founder of the Shadowed Ones, the Legion Harrowmaster Dynat Mal, would become particularly notorious for his actions during the Battle of Lix, which took place around 100 M31. Prior to the onset of this particular battle, Mal would establish contact with the Raven Guard Space Marine chapter, claiming that he was a loyalist who wished to parley. While few records remain detailing the exact events that had transpired, it is commonly believed that the Raven Guard were drawn into a devastating ambush, one that was essentially a smaller scale reenactment of the Istvan V dropsite massacre. The casualties suffered by the Raven Guard was so high that only a handful would manage to survive Dynat's ambush and escape. This act would ultimately earn Dynat Mal the moniker of Crowbane. Following the events of this massacre, Dynat Mal would lead his warband into the region of space known as the Mandragoran Stars, where he would proceed to recruit thousands of additional traitors, diabolists, and renegades to his banner. For several centuries, the Shadowed Ones would launch numerous raids throughout the sector, as well as conducting a prolonged guerrilla war against the Imperium. With the destruction of a key Imperial outpost upon the region's capital world of Amara, and the subsequent slaughtering of the world's population and plundering of resources, the Shadowed Ones would claim dominion over this particular region of space, which would eventually be reclassified as the Dark Marches. As a result of all Imperial ties to this region becoming severed, the worlds that had now fallen under the dominion of the Shadowed Ones would over time devolve into various states of anarchy, ignorance, and conflict. In early M32, Shadow Captain Kalangia of the Raven Guard would lead a task force into the depths of the Dark Marches, as they sought to hunt down and slay Dynat Mal in order to avenge their fallen battle brothers. However, despite the Dark Marches supposedly being under the control of the Shadowed Ones, the Raven Guard could find no evidence regarding the warband's presence, save for the wreckage of a few long-dead void ships. Seeking answers, Kalangia's strike force would make planetfall upon the jungle world of Apollyon. It was here that the Raven Guard would discover the remains of the Alpha Legion strike cruiser Occam's Razor, which stood like a vast tombstone over a great valley. As if to emphasize this visual similarity, the valley before Occam's Razor was filled almost to the brim with the skeletal remains, shattered armor, and broken war gear of thousands upon thousands of individuals. As the Raven Guard combed through this great charnel pit, they would discover the remains of not only humans, but also Eldari, Crave, and numerous other Xenos species. But more importantly, the Raven Guard would also discover the bodies of countless Astartes, which not only included warriors from the Alpha Legion, but also many from the Loyalist White Scars and Iron Hands chapters. The Raven Guard librarians, under the command of Kalangia, would then begin foretelling of the impending doom and disaster that would befall them should the chapter's forces linger upon the world for too long. His vengeance denied, Kalangia would order for the Raven Guard to depart from the world and abandon the Dark Reaches altogether. Following the revelation that the Shadowed Ones were seemingly destroyed, the world of Apollyon would attract the interest of the Inquisition, who would proceed to transform the planet into a fortress world. The Dark Marches would in turn become formally reclassified as the Orpheus sector following the Age of Apostasy, in honor of the rogue trader that initially discovered this region of space. And yet, the identity of those who could have wreaked such havoc upon the Shadowed Ones remains somewhat unclear. So just who, or what, could have wrought such devastation upon this Traitor Legion warband? The most commonly accepted belief is that the traitors were annihilated by the Necrons of the highly savage and malicious Maynarch dynasty. This would certainly appear to be the most likely possibility, due to the fact that numerous worlds throughout the Orpheus sector are highly suspected, if not confirmed outright, to be of Necron origin. During 991 M41, the tomb worlds of the Maynarch dynasty would begin to awaken en masse, resulting in the Necrons launching swift and violent assaults upon a number of the sector's frontier worlds, including that of the Forge world of Harrow's Watch, leaving no survivors in the wake of their onslaughts. While the Inquisition would initially suspect that these assaults were as a result of demonic activity, the Necrons would fully reveal their presence several months after these initial assaults, where a number of astropaths throughout the sector would all begin hearing a strange signal comprised of tortured screams, whispers in an unknown language, and a single phrase translated into Low Gothic: "Maynarch comes." Soon after this, the Angels' Revenant chapter of the Adeptus Astartes would be utterly destroyed by Necron forces, and all contact with the hive world of Drusilla Majoris would be lost. The Imperium would begin, albeit slowly, to respond to the Necrons, dispatching several Death Corps of Krieg regiments of the Astra Militarum, as well as Astartes forces, drawn from the Minotaurs, Red Seraphs, Nemesis Chapter, and Marauders to reinforce Imperial defenders against the Xenos threat. This conflict, which would become known historically as the Orphean War, would prove to be costly, both in resources and manpower. Following the Battle of Amara, Imperial forces would be pushed back to the worlds of Kalama and Layman, which rested along the edge of the sector, while those remaining defenders upon the worlds of Amara and Hydragast would become cut off from their allies. Despite suffering numerous casualties, Imperial forces would continue to hold out against the Necron threat. However, both Imperial and Necron forces would come under assault from a number of heretic Astartes due to the nearby Chomarium system falling to chaotic corruption, eventually resulting in a three-way stalemate. It would later be determined that the only way to reclaim the Orpheus sector from both traitor and Xenos forces alike would be to launch a full-scale crusade, though such a course of action would take at least 30 years to arrange, if not longer. Given how much devastation the Maynarch dynasty was able to wreak upon Imperial forces, which not only included tens of millions of guardsmen and planetary defense soldiers, but also thousands of Astartes, it would be fairly reasonable to assume that the Necrons could have reaped a bloody toll upon the Shadowed Ones, destroying them utterly. The charnel pit found upon Apollyon could theoretically be due to the actions of those members of the dynasty which had fully succumbed to the effects of the Flayer virus. These infected Necrons, known more commonly as Flayed Ones, not only boast an unnatural hunger for flesh and blood, but will even adorn their bodies with the skins and bones of their victims. As such, the mass grave that the Raven Guard discovered could have potentially been the aftermath of, for lack of a better term, a feast conducted by the Flayed Ones. Since the corpses located upon Apollyon were described as being skeletal remains, this would also appear to support the possibility of Flayed Ones being involved in some way, although it is equally possible that the natural decomposition process could have played a part in this regard. The fact the remains of so many races were callously dumped into a mass grave could also reflect the societal traits demonstrated by the Maynarch, as this particular Necron dynasty was noted to be exceptionally bloodthirsty and genocidal, with a hatred for all forms of life. This is suspected to be due in part to the dynasty's actions during the Necron revolt against the Khitan, for it is believed that the Maynarch were responsible for slaying the Khitan known as Liandugor the Flayer, whose death resulted in the creation of the Flayer virus. As the virus slowly manifested and spread itself throughout the dynasty's ranks, it was only due to the decree of the Silent King himself which prevented the Maynarch from being destroyed by the other Necron dynasties, for the ruler of the Necron-tier empire supposedly claimed that he still had a use for the Maynarch, and allowed them to be spared destruction. While such a possibility would initially appear to be a somewhat reasonable hypothesis, it is incredibly unlikely, if not outright impossible, for the Shadowed Ones to have come into conflict against any true Necrons, such as warriors or Flayed Ones. This is due to the fact that the Necrons of the Maynarch dynasty would only begin to awaken once a specific celestial event had occurred. As detailed within Imperial Armor Volume 12, the canoptek constructs of the Maynarch would only initiate the awakening protocols of their tombs following the death of the Caracol binary stars. In 990 M41, these stars, either by chance or design, would go supernova, resulting in the Maynarch tomb complexes to slowly come online. That being said, however, while these Necrons would not begin to awaken until after this particular celestial event had occurred, it is known that the dynasty had a number of security measures in place in order to keep their existence hidden from all others. The defensive systems of the Maynarch tomb worlds not only employed numerous canoptek constructs to protect their tombs from intruders, but entire phalanxes of war machines. These war machines, instead of merely eliminating trespassers, would proceed to actively hunt down and exterminate any nearby populations or starships, so that any potential witnesses or knowledge pertaining to the location of the Maynarch's tombs would be eliminated. With these factors in mind, it's certainly possible that the Shadowed Ones had inadvertently activated one or more of these defensive systems, resulting in the warband and their ships being ambushed and subsequently annihilated by the various war machines that were unleashed by the Tomb Worlds. But this still fails to explain the presence of the Great Charnel Pit upon Apollyon. Most examples of Necron weaponry, particularly that of their signature Gorse weaponry, works on the principle of breaking down the molecular structure of their target, effectively disintegrating or vaporizing it in its entirety. While certain constructs, such as canoptek wraiths, will favour the use of their claw-like appendages when dispatching of their opponents, if the defences of the Maynarch dynasty were intended to keep the existence of their tomb complexes a closely guarded secret, then simply depositing the bodies of intruders into a mass open grave is a highly illogical method to accomplish this. While the Maynarch were indeed stated to be rather short-sighted and insular in regards to the implementation of such precautionary measures, as shown within Imperial Armor 12, it would be more logical to assume that, should the Necrons wish to remain hidden, then the bodies of any potential intruders would have been vaporized by the weaponry of constructs such as Tomb Sentinels or Tomb Stalkers, so as to leave no trace of their existence. However, if the canoptek constructs of the Maynarch were also infected by the Flayer virus like their masters, then this could potentially have an effect upon their own behaviour in this regard. Alternatively, perhaps the mass grave upon Apollyon could have been intended to act as a warning to any potential trespassers. However, this does seem at odds with the Maynarch wishing to keep their very existence hidden from others until the day that they awaken en masse, especially since such a discovery would be more likely to attract explorers, who may wish to solve the mystery regarding the origin of such a grave. Nonetheless, the very existence of this charnel pit leads to a second possibility regarding the destruction of the Shadowed Ones, that it was the result of a sorcerous ritual that had gone wrong. As mentioned earlier, when Dynatmar began recruiting additional traitors and renegades to his banner, the Chaos Lord would also recruit a number of Diabolists. Diabolists are sorcerers that specialize in the arts of demonancy, the act of summoning demonic entities from the warp into real space. Because of this, could it be possible that the Diabolists recruited into the Shadowed Ones had intended to enact a ritual to summon a horde of demonic entities, or possibly something even greater in power, such as a lesser Chaos God? Such a possibility would not be entirely unprecedented, as within the short story Labyrinth, the Sons of Malice Chaos Space Marine warband would, over the course of 11 centuries, succeed in summoning the minor Chaos God Malice into the material realm. However, it remains unclear as to just how long Malice was able to remain within real space before returning to the depths of the warp. The charnel pit found upon Apollyon in this instance could be a result of countless sacrifices conducted by the Diabolists of the Shadowed Ones, with the bones of Eldari and Loyalist Astartes coming from individuals that had been taken prisoner for the purpose of being ritually sacrificed, with their suffering, blood, and souls being offered to this theoretical entity. If this were indeed the case, then the beings summoned by the Shadowed Ones could have been so great in power that it may have been beyond their ability to control, and could have therefore proceeded to go on an unstoppable rampage. This could very well explain as to why the Shadowed Ones were destroyed so suddenly and utterly. Furthermore, if a demonic or even godly entity were indeed responsible for eliminating the warband, then the reason for no trace of its existence remaining would be due to the fact that such a being would eventually be banished back into warp space. After all, demons are only able to exist within the material realm for relatively short periods of time, unless they can parasitically bond themselves to a mortal host. While this particular possibility may seem less likely than that of the Shadowed Ones being destroyed by the defensive constructs of the Maynarch dynasty, it is still an interesting idea to ponder. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.